No.
Hopefully the camera doesn't shut off like last time. Alright. So this is our third and final lecture for the integumentary system. Okay, and today we're specifically talking about healing. Right. Could someone read the first question?
How does the skin heal?
Okay, second question.
What are the stages of healing?
Okay, third question.
What happens at each one? Shout-outs?
Ready? Okay.
I'll do right.
So, I have a video so that the sound is working. Alright, so this is just a video about how healing happens. It's pretty cool. I think it's like a very fascinating subtopic of skin. Hopefully you do as well. But let me get this adapter.
Go here, back.
Are there any questions after this, like, about anything about class while I'm getting this to actually work?
Oh, this is kind of new.
Sometimes, like, the speaker from the ceiling cuts out, and so it's not as good as this.
This one's crazy because it's funny getting your voice. Is it not?
Yeah.
You're being it's not hitting your voice.
Because you're not talking. You're dead.
Huh? You'd be like, why is there no kids?
Addicted to it. Why'd you breathe out?
Marketing organ in your body with a surface area of about 10 square feet tall. So different areas of the skin have different characteristics. Much of this surface performs similar functions, such as sweating, feeling heat and cold, and growing hair. But after the impact of the wound, the newly healed skin will look different from the surrounding area and may not fully regain all its abilities for a while, or at all. To understand why this happens, we need to look at the structure of the human skin. The top layer, called the epidermis, consists mostly of hardened cells, called keratinocytes, and provides protection. Since its outer layer is constantly being shed and renewed, it's pretty easy to repair. But sometimes a wound penetrates into
So I just wanted to clarify. So what they were just talking about was the epidermis, right? We talked about the layers of the skin, epidermis being the outermost layer. It's super easy to repair that layer because it's consistently getting replaced. Things like paper cuts. If you think about paper cuts, right, they hurt for like more than they should,
Yeah.
right? Or if you like get hand sanitizer in them, like I did today, it really hurt. Yeah, but it heals within a couple days. Yeah, Jennifer.
Can I have the hard copy of the guided rules?
Sure. So now it's going to talk about cuts and wounds that are a lot deeper than epidermis.
which contains blood vessels and the various glands and nerve endings that enable the skin's many functions. And when that happens, it triggers the 4 overlapping stages of the regenerative process. The first stage, hemostasis, is the skin's response to 2 immediate threats that you're now...
There's 4 stages, 4 main stages. This is the first one. It's called hemostasis. Hemostasis.
And that the physical barrier of the epidermis has been compromised. As the blood vessels tighten to minimize the bleeding in a process known as vasoconstriction, both threats are averted by forming a blood clot. A special protein known as fibrin forms cross-links on the top of the skin, preventing blood from flowing out, bacteria or pathogens.
So there aren't actual worms in your body. That is just an animation of a molecule called fibrin, which is what creates your scab. So if you've ever looked at a scab before and you've seen little like tiny like cross hatches, that's fibrin. So that actually creates the like fibrous structure of a scab so that it actually keeps your skin closed. It recloses your skin.
And after about 3 hours of this, the skin begins to turn red, signaling the next stage, inflammation, with bleeding under control in the face.
Their second stage is inflammation. So there's a good type of inflammation and there's a bad type of inflammation. This is talking about the good type. Because there's inflammation when you get infected, or like if a pet gets infected, and that's not cool.
The body sends special cells to fight any pathogens that may have gotten through. Among the most important of these are white blood cells, known as macrophages, which devour bacteria and damaged tissue through a process known as phagocytosis, in addition to producing
I say phagocytosis, they were saying phagocytosis, it's the same thing. But pretty much it means that those white blood cells will consume the things that aren't supposed to be there. So phago means to eat, and cytosis means cellular, so it's pretty much like cellular eating. So what ends up happening is that those white blood cells will actually like break down the foreign particles that shouldn't be there, which is really good for us because then we don't get infected.
for healing. And because these tiny soldiers need to travel through the blood to get to the wound site, the previously constricted blood vessels now expand in a process called vasodilation. About 2 to 3 days after the wound, the proliferative stage occurs, when fibroblast cells...
Can you go back to the bus or whatever you did?
Yeah, vasodilation.
Yeah.
So there's vasoconstriction or vasoconstriction, and then vaso or vasodilation. So vasoconstriction means that your blood vessels are going to get slightly smaller so that you lose less blood, and then your scab will form. And then you have vasodilation so that you have more blood flowing so that the nutrients and your healing can continue to...
What do we write down for inflammation?
Inflammation. We'll talk about that later.
2 to 3 days after the wound, the proliferative stage occurs, when fibroblast cells begin to enter the wound. In the process of collagen deposition, they produce a fibrous protein called collagen in the wound site, forming connective skin tissue to replace the fibrin from before. As epidermal cells divide to reform the outer layer of skin, the dermis contracts to close the wound. Finally, in the 4th stage of remodeling, the wound matures as the newly deposited collagen is rewritten.
This is your 4th stage. This is where your wound actually closes.
You already got 5 now.
Remodeling.
No, we added the last the vasodilation.
Through this process, which will take over a year, the tensile strength of the new skin and blood vessels and other connections are strengthened. With time, the new tissue can reach from 50 to 80% of some of its original healthy functions, depending on the severity of the initial wound and on the function itself. But because the wound does not fully recover, scarring continues to be a major clinical issue for doctors around the world. And even though researchers have made significant strides in understanding the healing process, many fundamental mysteries remain unresolved. For instance, do fibroblast cells arise from the blood vessels or from skin tissue adjacent to the wound? And why do some other mammals, such as deer, heal their wounds much more efficiently and completely than humans? By finding the answers to these questions and others, we may one day be able to heal ourselves so well that scars will be just a memory.
Hey, Mason, what's 5? What's 5?
What's 5?
Yeah, step 5. Whatever.
Oh, I was just like giving you space to write more notes.
Oh.
So there's only 4 main like parts of healing, but that 5 is just for you to take more notes. Or if you thought something was more interesting. So, any questions about the video before I start going into the process more in depth? Okay. Alright, so hemostasis means stopping the bleeding. Hemo meaning blood, stasis meaning equilibrium or stopping. Okay? So that was the first stage that I talked about where your body is getting a signal that your blood is leaving and it's like, oh shit, we gotta stop that. Okay? And so it goes into hemostasis. Now, inflammation, it's the same slide, same information, just a different color and picture. Inflammation is when you actually have an influx of white blood cells, vasodilation happens, and during inflammation. Okay, so that's when your blood is like stopping, like you have a blood clot, you have or a scab, right? And then your body wants to get rid of all those foreign particles that ended up entering your body so that you don't get infected. Which is why it's really important to clean your wound before you put like Neosporin and a Band-Aid on it or something like that, because then you're helping your body.
I thought Neosporin was
Neosporin is an antibiotic. It does not clean the wound. It helps protect it from different bacteria that might end up infecting the wound, but usually like rinsing it or using some sort of like alcohol wipe, even though it really stings, like it helps to clean the wound before you actually dress it. So now the third one, or here, yeah. So like just to give you a little bit more information about inflammation, it dilates the blood vessels so that you have more blood flow to the area. Blood flow meaning nutrients and oxygen, so that the healing process can continue to occur. That's why things like cartilage and tendons take so long to heal, is because they're not. They don't have a lot of blood vessels. They have like a few, and so it takes like years for them to actually heal. Which is why if you like tear something in your knee, you have to go through a lot of PT. Okay. Your third stage, right, is your proliferative, which is pretty much meaning that you're replacing the skin. So scars can form. Right? I have a bunch of scars from different injuries and surgeries that I've had. But people's scars look differently depending on how their skin heals, which is kind of cool. So we still don't understand everything about that process, or why it happens, or like why it doesn't heal completely. And then we have our fourth one, which is just our remodeling. So that's where your skin actually will strengthen itself and try to get back to its baseline strength, so that you can continue using your body as you want to. Any questions about the 4 stages? So there's a couple different, there's 2 different like sections within dermatology that I want to talk about. They're called lesions and conditions. So lesions are variations in the skin, meaning things like freckles and moles, right? So like I have a bunch of moles on my arms. So those are technically considered lesions. And then conditions are more talking about the abnormalities of skin. So those are things like alopecia, acne, eczema, where you need, sometimes you even need like medical attention to make sure that those don't get worse. And just to show you like what alopecia looks like. Alopecia is just like hair loss. And of course, you will acne or pimples, right? It's a very natural thing. Everyone goes like has this at some point. So this is just showing like what happens where you have a healthy follicle and then you end up getting like the duct clogged with like dead cells, and then your oil starts to accumulate and build up, and then you can even get like a bacterial infection or inflammation if you don't take care of it and clean it, and then of course like sometimes it ruptures. It's not fun. And then this is just showing you a picture of eczema, right? So eczema is like when your skin gets super dry super fast, and it can end up leading to a lot of like not super fun things, or it can even go into like bleeding because it gets so dry. Alright. So this is a reminder of our skin, right? Epidermis to hypodermis, all the different structures from your capillaries to your sweat glands, right? Okay. So now we're going to talk about burns. Just a warning, the 3rd degree burn is like not a fun picture to look at. Just so you know, it's pretty drastic. But there's a way to help figure out what percentage of your body is covered in a burn, and that's called total body surface area, and it's a rule of 9s. And pretty much what that means is that each sort of body part was split into 9% of your total body surface area. So like your head, anterior and posterior head and neck are 9% of your body area. So from like here, both front and back, that's 9%. You have your arms that are each 4.5%. Added together, you get 9. Your legs are both 9%. Like your left leg is 9%, your right leg is another 9%. And then of course you have your trunk, which is actually 18, so it's a multiple of 9. And then your back is another multiple of 9. Yeah. And then you get 100% when you add everything up. So that's just like, that's what the rule of 9s is pretty much you split the surface area of your body into sections of 9%. So that it's easier to talk about, it's easier to calculate like how much of your of the surface of your body is covered in a burn, so that you know how much attention it needs. Okay, so severity. There's 3 different types, or 3 different severities. There's the 1st degree, which pretty much just goes through your epidermis. It's like a normal sunburn. It's like, yeah, that hurts, but it's not permanent damage. Your skin does end up being replaced. However, it's still not fun to be sunburned. And it really only goes through your epidermis. The 2nd degree burns are actually going through your epidermis and your dermis. So the less than 1% of these actually need medical attention, but you can get things like blistering. Yeah, which is like, it does not seem like fun to have a 2nd degree burn. Things like boiling water can also cause 2nd degree burns if you like accidentally spill it on yourself. It covers a large section of your body. And then your third-degree burns end up going all the way through to your hypodermis, sometimes even past your hypodermis and into the underlying structures. So as you can see from the picture, there's a lot of black, which means there's a lot of skin death. So black on your body, like when it's that dark, usually means your skin is dying. Yeah.
In that case, what do you like do?
What you what?
If like the skin is dead, what do you do when you go to the hospital?
Yeah, so
Would they have to like pick it out?
it depends on how much of your body is covered by it as to what they do. So I don't know the exact science behind it, but I can look it up and see. I know in some cases they will actually cut out the dead like sections and areas and wrap it so that it's like you have actual protective layer again. There are other cases where they'll leave it and then your body will like get rid of it. Yeah, so it's like it depends on the severity and like how much of your body. So like the video that we watched about the firefighter, right? He had third-degree burns on his face and he ended up recovering from it, but it took away all of the like skin tone and like all of the like underlying structures that he had, right, besides his bones. And so that's why he ended up needing the surgery because exactly. Because it was so severe that it pretty much like the fire just melted his skin in a way. So that's why you should use sunscreen. Please use sunscreen. It's really important. Not only for preventing burns, but also for helping you.
I never use sunscreen.
You never use sunscreen?
Well, you're gonna start.
Nah, for real, like all it is like if my skin peels, all I do is moisturize it and it's like
Moisturize.
So moisturizer is good for hydration. If your skin ends up peeling, that probably means you got sunburned and you're damaging your skin. So I recommend if you're outside for like more than 45 minutes.
I have an hour of practice and I don't use sunscreen. An hour in English.
That's where you have a 10 line.
Well, tan lines occur whether or not you use sunscreen. But I'd say like if you have the opportunity to, use sunscreen. At least like for me with the lighter skin tone, like, I need to use sunscreen, otherwise
Sunscreen.
so fast.
Please, that you.
Alright, any questions about healing or that process?
Are you going to the football game this way?
I was thinking about joining this part of it, yeah.
I'm afraid you said
I have sunscreen, don't worry. I've been on before, I
It's a
think.
late game, it's gonna be not using by the time.
I also have
Okay, but
sunglasses.
still, you need-
I'll probably bring a hat or something.
You
but I don't
can
know.
We should make dark.
Okay. Any questions about this process?
So fun to sleep.
Can we use these before our test?
So
It's not open up.
Next, are you gonna give us like a worksheet of all the things that we should be studying? Or are you gonna make us study our own and figure it out?
I told you that.
So for this quiz, I did not have time to make a study guide.
Great.
I'm sorry. I didn't have time to make a study guide for H either. But next quiz, I will make sure to have a study guide. It will be just like the concepts and topics that we talked about. I don't do like a practice test. Like I don't generally do that. Specifically because in university, you most likely will not be getting a study guide. Or if courses do, it's like for the entire semester, and it's a lot of information.
So since we're not having one, where can we look for the information? Like, does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Or
So
like what's important do we have to look at? Like what's important that we need to know?
Yeah.
I'd say anything that's on the guided notes.
The what?
The guided notes. like anything from today, like from module 0, 1, or 2 for the guided notes. Okay, so that will be,
You can make your own study guide.
we'll talk.
Oh, that's funny.
So, guided notes will be very helpful.
I'm about to get
Your
booted off the
reading
football
guides
team.
will also be very helpful in your study. Okay. So I'd say focus on those, and then make sure you know your vocab. Anatomy is very information and vocabulary heavy. And I know that. I know that's like
I'm
there's a lot. But it's also really cool.
Sit on the map.
So like,
It's because they're big, scary words. And they don't fit in my head.
I know. Alright.
Damn.
But we do have a review session tomorrow. Okay, so like I will be like leading a review session so that you all can like study from that as well as like tomorrow, like tonight or tomorrow.
My people taking a patient.
Are we able to take
Yes,
retakes?
are the grades?
Hold up. Okay, just.
Are we able to take retakes?
So I don't do retakes, but I do test corrections. Okay, it's not. I promise you, my quizzes